While looking at tickets for an upcoming holiday with friends, our Simple Flying reviewer had several airlines to choose from for the final leg of their return journey from Delhi to Mumbai. They opted for flag carrier Air India to see if the recent Tata acquisition had started having any significant effect on the overall experience. The decision to fly Air India on this part of the trip meant that a change of terminals at Delhi Airport was required, including a good few hours spent at the airport after the inbound flight. But here's how it went. After being dropped off at Terminal 3 of the Indira Gandhi International Airport in Delhi, the first stop was to head over to the check-in desk. But before that, there was a significant line to get into the airport. For those unaware, Indian airports require you to present your flight ticket and proof of identity to enter the airport's concourse. Armed guards at the entrance will check the ticket and verify your identity before allowing you in. Depending on airport conditions, you may need to allow for some additional time to deal with this. For a flight scheduled to depart at 1900, the decision was made to arrive at the airport a little less than 3 hours before the flight time. Once inside the building, it was quickly off to the nearest Air India check-in desk in sight at 1610. In this case, there was no queue. Going straight to the nearest agent, it was quickly discovered that this particular check-in desk was reserved for international flights. However, the Air India agent behind the counter was more than happy to help. Baggage drop took around 10 minutes, and no one in the group was anywhere near the maximum weight limit. In case you didn't know, Air India allows 25 kilograms or 55 pounds for the check-in baggage, even on domestic flights. This is much more generous than the 15 kilograms or 33 pounds offered with low-cost carriers like Indigo and SpiceJet. After dropping the bags and pushing the trolleys aside to the designated area, the group began walking towards the security check for domestic departures. Again, the queue wasn't too long, but it didn't move very quickly either. Here it was required that all electronic devices be emptied into a tray, with hand-carry baggage placed in another tray, both of which would then pass through the scanner. While this sounds pretty straightforward, one scanner was fed by 2 adjacent lines, so there was quite a wait to place trays onto the roller. On the other side of the machine, trays would be delivered to travellers on one of 2 automated rollers. Trays coming on the outer rollers were cleared by security and free to be grabbed by the passenger, while those on the inner rollers were flagged for security concerns. At the end of the inner roller, security officials would scan that tray's RFID tag and then scan the code on your boarding pass with a different reader, before directing your attention towards a computer monitor. The screen would have an X-ray image of your bag, and the security officer will point to objects of concern and ask for an explanation. A word to the wise: don't clutter your hand baggage with multiple unnecessary items, and if asked, promptly show the officials what they ask for so you can be on your way sooner. Arguing with the official will get you nowhere. All in all, it took our group just around 40 minutes to get past security after entering the airport. The overall experience was incredibly smooth, but the security check was a little nerve-wracking. The security check was completed at around 16:45. Today's flight was flight AI-624 and was at gate 34B of Terminal 3, which is located near the end on one side. The walk was long, but thankfully there was enough time. There were many people waiting at the gate, giving the impression that it would be a full flight. Boarding started about 5 minutes later than planned, but the flight reviewers were in their seats by 18:20. The boarding process continued for another half an hour, and towards the end, safety announcements were made stating that the aircraft was being refueled. With all aboard and the plane adequately fueled for the 2-hour flight, flight AI-624 was being pushed back from the gate at 18:59, a minute before its scheduled departure time. As mentioned, today's flight was aboard Air India Flight 624 on July 1st. AI-624 is a daily scheduled service from Delhi's IGI airport to Mumbai's CSMIA, operated using an Airbus A320neo aircraft. The flight is scheduled to depart DEL at 1900 for a 21:15 arrival in India's financial capital. On July 1st, flight number AI-624 was operated using an A320neo registered as Victor Tango Charlie India November, a reasonably new 4.3-year-old airframe that has been with the Indian flag carrier since new, data from CH Aviation shows. Air India took the brand new plane on May 2, 2018, and has been using it on domestic as well as short-haul international routes like Mumbai to Abu Dhabi or Chennai to Singapore. Like all AI A320 Neos, Victor Tango Charlie India November features a two-class cabin configuration with a total of 162 seats between regular economy and business class. Of those, 12 seats are in business class, while the remaining 150 are in economy. After having flown with Indigo and SpiceJet within a week before the AI flight, one thing that was instantly noticeable was how Air India does a fine job of including Indian culture in the overall flight experience. When setting foot on the plane, passengers are greeted with the traditional Indian greeting Namaste instead of the usual and frankly quite dull hello or good evening. The cultural connection doesn't stop there. Air India crew refers to passengers as Atithi, the Hindi word for guests, another tiny yet impactful gesture. As initially expected, the flight was filled to the brim. In this review, we are seated at seat 22A with a pleasant view through the portside window. After pushing back from the gate, our Airbus A320 fired up its engines and began taxiing at 19:06 hours. Runway 11 was assigned to the aircraft for takeoff, which happened in a relatively short 8 minutes. The Recaro seats on this aircraft were quite comfortable. They provide 28 to 29 inches of pitch and measure 18 inches in width. In the case of our flight review and flight reviewer, we were unable to fully use the 4-inch recline functionality as the nice lady behind politely asked to move forward since she was travelling with a baby. The legroom and tray table were functional but average. However, one thing that some passengers may find irritating is the absence of a seat-back pocket. This meant that there was no place to stow personal belongings, like a phone, away during the meal. Indeed, there was some space behind the tray table, but it was only good for storing pieces of paper like the safety instructions pamphlet. Less than 20 minutes after takeoff, cabin crew announced the beginning of the meal service. However, since the plane was full, it took another 20 minutes for the crew to get to us at row 22. The flight reviewer pre-selected vegetarian Hindu meal through the AI website a few weeks before the flight. Surprisingly, Air India's food on this flight was spot on. The menu included traditional Indian curry and dal, cooked lentil curry, along with some hearty side dishes. For the main course, there was the following: Matar Paneer, a North Indian curry made from green peas and paneer, cottage cheese, prepared in a tomato sauce with plenty of spices. Dal Makhani, a lentil curry also riddled with various spices, and plain rice. This combination was meant to be had with one aloo paratha, or bread stuffed with a spiced potato filling. There was a small cup of curd and an even smaller box of mixed pickled vegetables to go with the meal. For dessert, ras malai was provided, which is a sweet dish from eastern India made from clotted cream flavoured with cardamom. The meal was quite enjoyable. Curries and rice were steaming hot, and so was the bread. But the dessert dish stood out as particularly satisfying as it was soft and incredibly juicy, bursting with flavour in every bite. Another thing that stood out as noteworthy was that the cutlery was all metal, not something you often see in economy class. After covering around 1,200 kilometres or 705 miles, Flight 624 arrived in Mumbai at 2100 hours, 15 minutes earlier than scheduled. If you'd like to catch a glimpse of some of Air India's retired Boeing 747s, make sure to grab a window seat on the left side for any flights arriving into this airport. The airport uses runway 27 most of the time, but the alternate runway will not disappoint either. To wrap things up, the flight was extremely smooth, and the entire experience was only improved by the caring and efficient cabin crew that went out of their way to accommodate special requests on a full flight. The journey took a short hour and 45 minutes and included some incredible sunset views right after departing Delhi. Have you ever travelled with Air India before? If so, what was your experience with the airline? Let us know by leaving a comment. Simple Flying publishes over 150 articles every week. If you're looking for the latest aviation news and insights, visit simpleflying.com.